Once upon a time, the Lake Chad was a huge inland sea regarded as the fourth largest lake in Africa and the sixth largest in the world. Today, that is history because the lake, which once covered an area of about 25,000 square kilometers, is now a paltry 532 square kilometers. Most of it has been lost and it is now a shadow of itself. Now, as the lake has lost much of its waters, so have the sources of livelihood of the over 45 million living in the basin also drained. Indeed, in recent times, the lives of its inhabitants have come under serious threat from insurgent activities. Experts have long warned and continued to warn that Lake Chad is on the verge of disappearing totally unless something urgently is done. That exactly is why President Muhammad Buhari hosted the international community to the high-level meeting on saving the Lake Chad, attended by members of the Lake Chad Basin Commission. Our focus on Nigeria today is on how the outcome of this conference addresses the urgency in saving the Lake Chad. I am Joy Usiago. Thanks for joining us. We're joined by two experts with sufficient knowledge on the Lake Chad. First, we welcome Professor Emmanuel Adanu, Executive Director, National Water Research Institute, to my far left. You're welcome.
Thank you very much, yes.
Also joining us is Professor Jimmy Adegoke. He is a professor of geosciences, University of Missouri, Kansas, United States of America. You're welcome, Professor Adegoke.
Thank you very much.
Let me start with you, Professor Adegoke. What is the magnitude of the tragedy in the Lake Chad?
It's difficult to put it in words. I've been to the Lake Chad. I started working there 20 years ago. And my last trip to the Lake Chad was about 8 years ago, 9 years ago. And we were able to still get onto the lake itself. We did extensive research in the basin during that period. But that was just before the insurgency, the Boko Haram problem began to make that place almost impossible as a site for research. The problem is enormous. In fact, I say, as a climate scientist, that the Lake Chad is the epicenter. It's what you might call the ground zero of the impacts of climate change globally. There is hardly anywhere else in the world that you can compare where you have a convergence of such a dislocation in the climate system itself, and the ecology and the ecosystem, and then the economy and the social conditions of the people in that area. So what we have is a very unfortunate, but a very catastrophic convergence of forces, you know, that have created this cycle where. As you indicated in your opening, 45 million people, their lives and livelihoods have been seriously endangered.
Okay, Professor Adan, let's look at the reasons. What led to the decline? Was it a gradual process, and what are the causative factors?
Well, thank you very much. Well, if you look at the analysis put forward, data collected over years, the monitoring activities by NASA, satellite monitoring, and even ground truthing of some of the activities there are so many factors. From NASA reports and some videos we saw. And also evidences gathered, data gathered from rainfall, precipitation, evaporation, and some other surface activities. It's principally rainfall, decline, and variability. Then we also have some surface water mismanagement. We also have the ground degradation, our river incapacitated by siltation, so water was no more going there. Then basically infiltration, which has not been thoroughly studied. I said infiltration because that lake is one of the very few lakes, inland lakes, that have this freshwater quality. Most inland lakes like that have salty water, but the origin of it is such that rainwater from rivers are the ones converging from different angles to make the lake. But the lake loses its water only through evaporation and infiltration. All the points we've gathered so much, we can share the blames on climate change, infiltration and all that. But there are other factors too. I can take the blame. The infiltration has not been properly studied.
So now, can we say this was a gradual process? This is not something that happened overnight.
Yeah, gradual. We have a cyclical event. After every 10 years, there is a change in rainfall pattern and all that. We can tie it to that. But there are some other fortuitous conditions that are so propitious to this. Events that happened elsewhere sometimes can be traced to it. But unfortunately, we have not been able to confirm some of the activities. The loss of water through evaporation, transpiration, agricultural use, then insufficient flow into the... If you put them together, they do not match the total loss. So what is the difference? That difference is yet to be found. What is constituting the extra loss? And we believe that it could be a groundwater dissipation.
Why is it difficult to be found?
Now, because the NASA can go up, look at the surface and see the cyclic movement of water. But the depth to which they can go is very minimal. After the vegetational depth, that's all. I'm talking of depths up to 500 meters, 1 kilometer below the ground. The lake charge is situated in such an environment that there's a likelihood that there's a conductivity between this lake and another process somewhere. So the water in the lake will be going down while the overland cyclic movement of rainfall, transpiration, evaporation and all is going on, but the lake as seated there could also be losing water into the ground. Sometimes that forms the reserve that we need in future. Mm-hmm. But even though the lake is drying, it's storing itself there. But what we are using the water for right now is mainly agricultural purposes, livestock, and so if we consider that surface movement as a main catastrophic event arising from, we should also be mindful of blaming everything on climate change.
All right, Professor Adegoke, let me come back to you. The lake chart is shared by many countries, Cameroon, the Central African Republic, Nigeria.
That's correct.
Can we say these countries contributed to the recession of the lake?
Well, I actually sort of categorize the drivers of this change. Professor Adanu has very eloquently addressed the complexity of it. But I categorize those drivers into three. There is the global driver, which is undisputably connected to the changing variability in climate, because if you look at just take the rainfall regimes, the variability in rainfall from the pre-1950s, early 60s to now, you can see that there's a very close relationship between the lake level and the rainfall received. But so there's that global effect of climate variability. But beyond that, there is also the regional driver, and that regional driver relates to, I think, some degree of, I wouldn't call it mismanagement, but I would call it some degree. We haven't yet reached the level of management cooperation that we need in terms of water management in that basin, and that's where the point you just made becomes very critical, because you have several countries you have that are part of the basin. So there is a regional element to it, and of course there is a local element which relates to conflicts within local communities there. Some of it is just based on resource, the scarce resource and conflicts that has generated as part of this complicated set of factors that has resulted in what we see in the Lake Chad today.
Professor Adanu, so what are these countries doing wrong in terms of regional management of the Lake Chad basin?
It's very difficult to blame any country on doing wrong. First of all, when human beings see water, they use it because it's very necessary. And secondly, what are the various contributions from all these countries into the Lake Chad? What is Nigerian contribution, for instance? We contribute to the total volume of the lake, maybe less than 5%. And it goes into the northern segment of the lake, the northern basin of the lake. The lake is divided into two. The northern basin is where Nigeria contributes water through the Komadugu-Yobe, the Adija, Jamari, Komadugu-Yobe, that goes in there. Now, Cameroon, not directly as such, but Legon River that comes to Ubangi to come down to Chari and then Lake Chad. Central African Republic contributes majority, about 95% of the total volume of water. They have not tampered it sufficiently to deprive the lake of the water. But from our own section, the hydrological area, that is the area in Nigeria that contributes the volume of water there, annually has a volume of about 7 billion cubic meters of water interacting. But we discharge only 1.6 or so into Lake Chad.
So do we have a central body coordinating the management of the Lake Chad?
Yeah, the Lake Chad Basin Commission has the responsibility of doing some of it, and they are doing quite a lot. They are gathering information from all the states or the countries that are contiguous to the lake. They are doing that. The management is it's very difficult sometimes to deprive anybody of water, because we are entitled to water, whether we like it or not. Now, first is to make sure water is available to human beings. Now, the volume of water, if it is constant and the population is growing, that per capita availability decreases, and it is a right. So, population growth and the limitation of the water availability itself, both of this will contribute to the volume of water, and management is going to incorporate this. Prof was just talking about integrated management. He was just short of saying that the integrated management is not too effective, not because the science is not available, not because the knowledge is not available, but because certain issues must be taken into consideration.
Professor Adegoke, so coming to the issue of the challenge we have with the Lake Chad, the recession, is it reversible?
Yes. It's clear that first of all, the Lake Chad Basin is a very shallow lake. You know, it's a very shallow lake. So if you can bring in water, if you find a way to bring in water into that basin, you certainly would increase the surface area of the available water that is there. So is it technically feasible? Yes. Is it a viable solution? A lot of people have looked into it, and we think that it is a viable solution. We can, in fact, with concerted effort, reverse the strength that we have seen now. But you cannot do it without infusing new sources of water into that lake. You either have to bring it from a different basin, like this interbasin transfer that we have, that seems to be the solution of choice right now, or you look at the underground available water underground and find ways to connect or bring water from underground into that basin. So the answer to that is yes.
All right. This is Nigeria Today on NTA News 24, and we're talking about saving the Lake Chad. The program continues after this break, where we take some of the interventions of the heads of states that spoke at the high-level meeting on Lake Chad.
Treat the issues of the Lake Chad with the urgency they deserve and show the needed political commitment toward reviving the lake. The time to act is now. The time to bail out the region is now. The time to show our humanity is now. As we continue on this journey towards our goal, I wish to use this medium to solicit for your continued collaboration and support. Let me reiterate our firm commitment to restore the Lake Chad to its former glory.
The declaration of Abuja, which of course will follow, must incarnate a roadmap that is very important, which all our partners must support, so that we'll be able to actually bring to bear our ambitions concerning the Lake Chad restoration.
It is therefore an opportunity for us to transform the issue of Lake Chad from a regional issue to an African concern. This is our commitment as African leader. This is our vision for the Africa we want. This is our legacy for the coming generations.
UNESCO believes that the water is a catalyst for cooperation, and that cooperation is crucial for sustainable and peaceful development. We stand ready to assist member states of the Lake Chad Basin.
Thank you for staying with us. Gentlemen, you listen to the sound bites there, and it's obvious that the summit is like a call to action for us. So let me start with you, Professor Adan. What are the major takeaways from this summit?
There was a consensus, first of all, to recognize that there is a problem. If you listen to our president, he's very worried about this. The urgency is there. The commitment of his colleagues is necessary. The ownership of the project also is necessary. And also the openness with which we should tackle this. He wants us to be, his colleagues to be diplomatically very, how will I say, moderate in discussing this. He wants us to own it. But the problem exists now. So other alternatives should come, at least to ameliorate this. Prof mentioned taking water from one basin to the other. It is a normal thing when one basin is deficient in water and the other one has a lot of water or excess in water. Interbasin water transfer is there. What the president is saying indirectly is for the nations that have the water that may not have the problem we have now to be open and also try to share this common natural good for the benefit of the oneness of Africa.
But are they willing to share?
Well, sometimes when a good thing is going on, certain people can introduce obstacles. Let me tell you one thing. There was a project, Trans-Aqua water transfer. That was the main thing that started some of these things in the late 70s and early 80s. Is to transfer water from the Congo all the way to Chad and also connect it to other countries around. So a link from the Central Africa across to West Africa. A lot of benefits were associated with that. The EU at the time did not support it until somebody made a statement to them. He even promised taking them to court. In discussing this now, we should never be unmindful of the remnants of such inconsideration from the European communities in destroying it. So the Africans must work together, try to appeal to those people who don't have the problem but have the resources to share. So a diplomatic model should be formed. And I'm sure our president has the capacity to do that. Bringing this number of people here, sitting and making commitment in the presence of about over 1,000 people who came for this is already an achievement.
Yeah.
Right. Professor Adegoke, it was agreed at the summit that there is a need to raise about $50 billion to save the Lake Chad. Where is this money going to come from?
That's a very good question. The problem is a big problem. It's in fact, I use the word mega problem. You know, and when you have a mega problem, you need a mega solution. Okay. In fact, part of the conversations that we had during the conference was this idea of the fact that, look, there have been, the world has, and countries in the world and you know, other locations in the world, they have reached situations when there was a need for a major deliberate intervention, you know, a mega intervention. The example is one example, and you know, is Europe itself. You're talking about Professor Adanu is talking about European Union just now. After the Second World War, Europe was a mess. You know, total mess. You know, devastation across many of the major economies that we know now as the EU. And there was the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan came together. The U.S. led that program, put the equivalent of 250 billion, infused that into those economies and into those countries, and we saw that the results of that are obvious and clear to everybody. So we need our own Marshall Plan. Okay, we need a Marshall Plan in the sense that
when you say we, are you referring to Nigeria or all member states?
No, all member states. All member states. This money is not going to come from Nigeria. We can't put 50 billion. I don't know that we even have 50 billion. You know, as a single country. But the problem is both a global problem, is both a regional problem, and is a local problem. You know, so the African Union, the West African countries that are part of that commission, that basin, and then our partners. This is the time for those who are our friends to step up and really show that they are our friends. That's the way I see this. You know, Europe may have had its own Marshall Plan. You know, the guy Marshall, he was a general. He was the Secretary of State for the U.S. At that time, and the plan was named after him. For something like this to work, you need a champion. You need a major champion, and I think we're beginning to see that a coalition is emerging with strong political leadership. What we've just seen this week is an indication of that.
So, in other words, Professor Adanu, the political will is pretty high.
Yeah, if what we heard from the conference is what to go, I think the commitment is there. Funding is a problem. And there are other problems too that may come up. Diplomatically, I mentioned it, if they accept to be open, to cooperate, own the project, and then commit themselves to it. I think, because the interbasin water transfer, we say between 50 and 70 billion euros. Yeah, but it's phased. This can be done over 30 years. But the first phase of it may cost about 7 billion, maybe 4 billion and then 7 billion. So as time goes on, you keep adding other benefits into it. But the phase that may move some water to Lake Chad is not just 50 billion.
All right, let's quickly, Professor Adegoke, talking about the issue of transfer of water from the Ubangi Basin. How feasible is that?
It's feasible. I mean, it's been, the Israelis have done it very effectively. China, we were, even in this meeting, the Chinese were, there was a very interesting presentation. They have 3 major water transfer projects going through several hundreds of thousands of kilometers. So it's technically feasible. It's technically challenging as well. But it can be done.
All right, gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for joining us today. That's it on Nigeria Today. You can watch this episode of the program online. The address is www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. Join us same time tomorrow for another topic. We thank you very much for coming into our studios once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.